morning, everybody. I hope you're doing really well. We have a fantastic announcement to give forward today. Looks like we're moving to stage 2 in the pandemic, which means that some things are going to be able to operate and open again. And one of those things is places of worship, which is us as a church. So here at Living Faith Assembly out in Kirkland Lake, our congregation size has been between 60 and 70, and our building allows for 250. So 30% capacity would be 75. So we would be able to operate as per normal. Of course, we will be doing, your safety is a concern of ours, and so we will be doing everything that we can in order to provide some extra things as we begin to navigate this. So we have pews in our congregation, so we'll be using every second pew. And then families will be on the left side and on the right side of the pews, nobody in the middle. We'll be doing things like propping open doors, having hand sanitation stations. We'll have people that will be monitoring the bathrooms, continuously washing them and keeping them clean. Doors propped open so you don't have to touch the handles and stuff. Offering will continue to be done at the back, so that way we're not passing a plate around or anything like that. And other things, of course. We won't be doing children's church. It'll be up for discussion amongst the board for September, but throughout the summer, we won't be offering anything, especially during times like this. So kids will be in service. I'll try and keep that in mind. We'll try and have some coloring pages or something to help parents out, because we do care about you and we care about your kids. You'll be helping us navigate this. It's a little bit new for all of us, but I'm looking forward to seeing you guys. I mean, I've enjoyed driving church, being able to see you guys come out, and but being able to see you now in person, I can't wait. Being able to pour into you guys again. I mean, I just barely got to know you guys, and then everything began. So a bit scary, but again, I'm super excited to see you guys. So that's our main announcement. Otherwise, I guess, so we have been covering Bill Hybles' Character. It used to be entitled Who You Are When No One's Looking. And we've been slowly going through everything, and we have been lately talking about love. We have covered tender love and tough love and sacrificial love, and everyone's beginning to wonder how many loves are there. Today, we'll be talking about radical love. I guess to start with, I should probably define what radical means, because I asked the question to some people, and they're like, I'm not too sure. And so radical is a drastic change in the fundamental nature of something. So it's like a major change, something that has completely changed what it was of its nature. So I picture something going one direction and then all of a sudden going the other direction. It's like a major and drastic change. And so that's what radical means. And so when you talk about radical love, I guess what we're talking about today is about those instincts that sometimes you have and going against your natural tendency to do things and instead respond in love, whereas other people may not respond in that way. I think some of you are already beginning to guess where I'm going to go with this. But the first thing I enjoyed doing was talking with my sister and my family, and I really wanted to dive into the idea that why do you cry? Especially when watching movies. So when watching movies, what movies begin to really draw out that emotion in you? So talking with my wife, talking with my sister, and so they said moments like great moments of courage, or when a heroine or someone important dies in the story, or a love story, and all those are very valid. And I began to sit and say, well, why does that bring upon an emotion in you? And they're like, well, of course, we place ourselves in the heroes or in the main character. We put ourselves in that position, and so we begin to feel empathetic. We feel what they're feeling. And I said, well, go deeper, though. What is it in all of a sudden in your heart that, you're in a moment like that, if you're the hero, what is it that begins to bring these emotions out? When you see someone do something courageous, why all of a sudden do the tears begin to swell up and you're just like, oh, wow. And what I began to realize My wife makes fun of me all the time. She says, I cry over everything. But during emotional moments in movies, for me, it is because it reflects the love of God. I think all stories brought down to the root when you have those emotional moments can be related to God. And so even if you have a romantic and a love story and someone passes away and it's like, that's not fair, what a horrible situation, or I'm so sad for them, and I'm like, well, isn't exactly like that between the bride of Christ and the church that fell away? His people who fell away and lived in darkness, lived in death, and then Christ redeemed them. And it's like, yeah, death isn't fair. And he conquered that. And so it begins to well up this emotion in you. Or a moment of great courage when someone stands up for what is just, for what is right. You begin to resonate with that because they're standing for something that is worthy of fighting for. And then I say, and I look at it, I'm like, well, didn't Christ do the same thing? Weren't we worth fighting for? And when he was crucified and when he went through the torture that he went through and all of that, I'm like, he still said, I love you. Wasn't that an incredible moment of courage? And so those emotions deep down inside of us, I believe, are connected to who God is. And a great story of redemption or courage or even one of death and life, all of it in its base begins to reflect who God is. And so as we talk about a radical love, I really did want to take a look at some of the things Jesus taught, of course, picking up our Bibles. We're going to dig into some of that, but in radical love, it's about going against the grain. So those moments in those movies where in your heart you're just like, oh, I would do that. If I was in that situation, I want to be courageous. Or, in that beautiful romantic part, and I wish I was part of that. Or, well, in all those moments where you begin to feel those things, I want to investigate and dig into that love and talk about the radical, the great change in us that must take place, and what God has taught us must take place in our hearts in order to have a radical love. Again, which means it's a drastic change in the fundamental nature of something. And so we're going to take a look at us and how we normally respond to certain situations, and how fundamentally a radical love we need to train up in it. We need to grow in that so we can go against what maybe the rest of the world would do. So, Matthew chapter 5, starting in verse 39, it talks about teaching about revenge. Ooh, I say that just ooh, because I'm a vindictive person. I hate to admit it. I don't like to admit it, okay? It's probably one of my flaws that my initial instinct when someone hurts me is like, I must get my revenge. I must get it back, especially in board games. I guess I'm ruthless sometimes. Someone takes advantage of a part of the board game. It's like, oh, that's it. They broke the alliance. Now I have to find a way to get them back. Not a good quality, but revenge is something that a lot of us can feel in our hearts, right? You get cut off or someone mistreats you. You see their car in the parking lot, and have you ever seen a car that's been keyed? You'd be like, oh, someone made someone mad, right? And it's about taking that revenge in your heart, about having justice. It's a good way to put it. So this is what it says, starting in verse 30. So this is Matthew chapter 5. You have heard the law that says the punishment must match the injury. An eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth. But I say, do not resist an evil person. Ooh, so if you want to highlight what Jesus said there, underline, bold, italicize, whatever it takes, okay? Do not resist an evil person. If someone slaps you on the right cheek, offer the other cheek also. If you are sued in court and your shirt is taken from you, give your coat as well. If a soldier demands that you carry his gear for a mile, carry it for 2. Give to those who ask, and don't turn away from those who want to borrow. So it's interesting. The law says, and back when this was written, back when Jesus said this, the law was a very important thing. Having justice was very important to the society and the culture. This is why Jesus is addressing it, is saying, you say eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth, as in, if you lost something, it must be repaid in the exact amount that was taken. Not more, not less. It has to meet a certain criteria to be perfectly balanced, right? You must have your perfect revenge, right? And Jesus says the opposite, right? Where we talk about just loving our neighbors and love others as you love yourself and stuff like that. Jesus says, love your enemies. Ooh, that is quite the challenge. And of course, it's easy to love people who love you, but the true challenge is loving those who hurt you. And so he's talking about the law, right? And not responding in that way, but instead loving those people, right? And I'll get a little bit into the slapping and the your shirt is taken and the carrying luggage for a Roman soldier. We'll get into that more in a moment. But it's just interesting that it's like, when you receive abuse, when you are taken advantage of, remember, the title said teaching about revenge, right? Everything in your heart says, no, I want justice. This isn't fair. This isn't right. I should slap that person right back. Slap me. How dare you? And he says, no, do the opposite of what you're feeling. Begin to love those people. So we're talking about radical love here, right? Because it's a radical change in the nature of something, right? And so where everyone would initially instinctively be like, you punch me, I punch you back. Jesus is like, no, offer the other side. Respond in a way of love. Okay, so again, just really wanted to highlight that back then, justice was immensely important to people. Things had to be just right. And it's a little bit crazy because we crave justice, right? Someone bangs into your car, it's like, I demand repairment to fix my vehicle, whether insurance takes care of it or paying out of your pocket, or I demand justice to be restored the way it was before. And so we crave this idea of justice. But you really got to wonder, will we ever receive it? Can you ever actually fully receive justice here on this earth? I mean, think about that a little bit more intricately. When you get into a car accident, someone has hit you, think of the adrenaline and everything, the fear in that moment. I just got hit. In that moment, something gets taken from you. Or what about if you get robbed? In that moment, you feel violent. If someone came into your home and broke into your home and took things and left, you feel not just robbed, but violated. They came to a place that you felt was safe and now made it unsafe. And so you have to live in this fear. And it's like, I need security. Maybe we need neighborhood watch. What can I do? Like, there's so much more that's taken. Can you truly actually get revenge, restitution, just by getting your belongings back? And so it's interesting that we crave the sense of justice, but truly justice is like following the rules, I guess, is following the guidelines. But who made the rules of the universe to begin with? It's only God. And so truly justice can only come from God. And when we take a look at Jesus's life, and when you say, they slapped him and put the crown of thorns on his head, and they abused him and nailed him to a cross, and oh, thank goodness, God didn't want justice and revenge. We would all be obliterated. But instead, God taught something. That instead of revenge, give love. Instead of wanting that restitution, give more. And it's such a radical love, such a different way, against the grain way of looking and thinking of things. So God says to stop fighting people like that and to submit to them. Like it's a little hard. Okay, so let's talk about the slap. And in my mind, being my ADD self, I think of Bugs Bunny from the Looney Tunes. And he'll usually get a metal gauntlet, right? And walk to someone and smack. I challenge you to a duel. And the other character is almost knocked out. And so I think of that slap. And back then, if you were having a conversation with someone and it got heated and someone felt like you had wronged them to such a degree, it was the ultimate, I was going to say humility, humiliating of the person to slap them. To be like, you have angered me, you have brought me to such a place. Now, it's not a fist fight, right? It's not like, that's it, war, let's they come up to you and slap you. It wasn't even necessarily hard, but it demanded a response. You just completely, publicly humiliated that person. And it demanded a response that either they demanded justice or that, wow, like, I remember in school when someone would talk poorly about someone else, and then gossip would just spread immensely, of course. And somehow, by the time we hit lunchtime, there was this idea that they would meet at the plaza off school property, of course, because you don't want the police involved, I guess. And they would fight. And so you would have a gathering, 100, 200 people in this swarm of circle to see and to encourage the fight, what would happen. Because it was like, this person has humiliated me, they've spoken poorly about me, and so I guess I have to fight them. And so back then, that's what it was like. When you slapped someone, you humiliated them publicly to such a degree that it demanded a response. Okay? And when you look at all of that way, Jesus begins to contradict that feeling. Right? He begins to, you're like, I demand justice. You've humiliated me. You have, and instead, he takes it to the opposite side and agree and is like, well, then slap the other side. If I have offended you, if I have hurt you to such a degree that you feel like that you need to make this right by humiliating me and slapping me, then why don't you slap the other side too? I offer myself up to you. And it's like such an apologetic that I'm sorry that I've humiliated you, or that I've offended you, that has caused the slap. The proper response is that if you've offended someone to such a degree that they feel the need to slap you and humiliate you, then instead of defending yourself, respond with restoring to them the offense to an even greater degree. And if you feel so justified and that I was so wrong in doing what I did to you, that you feel the need to hit me, then do it again, and I will repay you back whatever you feel that I have done to you. So if in that moment, them taking revenge out on you and humiliating you and slapping you brought them any sense of justice, of peace, or, outrage that this is what they needed to do, just picture that, if you did slap them back, if you did punch them back, that's it. It would just continue to escalate. There'd be a brawl on the floor. But if in response you try to restore what they feel like you have taken, be it verbally, right? And be like, if you feel restored, or you feel like you needed to slap me, then slap me again. It comes from such a place of humility, such a place of I didn't mean to do this to you. This isn't where the degree of this debate that we were having, that I wanted this effect to have on you, that all of what was said in the end is irrelevant compared to the relationship that we share. And so why don't you take your full justice so that we can actually continue having a relationship? Like, what a degree, what a change in attitude in your heart. I mean, think about it. You're minding your own business and someone comes talk to you about something, and then boom, your initial response and everything in you will want to be to hit back. And that's why it's called radical love, because you're going against all those feelings, and you're you're looking for restitution of relationship and of love, and responding in love, especially in a moment where you don't feel like it, right? And so it's interesting that Jesus is like trying to get you to a place where relationship is way more important. Excuse me. Did you know that Jesus did get slapped? So it's great because he didn't just, practice what he he didn't just preach it. He practiced it. John chapter 18, verse 22. Then one of the temple guards standing nearby slapped Jesus across the face. Is that the way to answer the high priest who demanded? And Jesus replied, if I said anything wrong, you have to prove it. But if I am speaking truth, then why are you slapping me? Wow, you just slapped God. I'd like to picture that person up in heaven one day. Be like, I slapped God. Wow. But Jesus' response in all of that is, listen, why did you slap me? For what reason? What have I done wrong to wrong you? It's like he's immediately looking for that restoration. Let me restore, or if I have wronged you, let me know what it is so we can begin a restoration process. But if not, then why have you hit me? Who has a logical discussion after being hit? Right? Who looks at the heart of the issue and is like, craves a relationship way more than anything else and responds in such a loving way? Again, our natural response would be to hit back, right? And there's God, all the power at his fingertips. And it doesn't, I guess, even cross his mind. That's it. Demand revenge. No, it's let's begin to make this right. So Jesus was ready to offer the other cheek, but he wanted to know what he did wrong. And I find this interesting is that I truly believe that the Holy Spirit, that God, looks around for the planet to find people who respond in a similar way. People who, when they get hurt, when they get abused, when they get taken advantage of, that they don't respond in a way that everyone else would respond, but instead respond in love. Because I truly believe that those people will begin to have the right heart, the right mindset, the right thickness of skin to be able to take some abuse, to be able to reach people that no one else can. Because it takes a certain someone, a certain special heart in order to be wronged and respond with an incredible, radical love that goes against everything. And you truly will be able to begin to reach people that no one else would otherwise reach, because they'll see something in you that's different than the rest of the world, and the way the rest of the world has begun to teach them that it is eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth, and it should be war, and instead respond with love. And so I believe that God searches for people of the right heart so that he can put them to work. And I truly believe that the reason why when I came to get to know the Lord, he became my everything, that I didn't get zipped up to heaven instantly, because he has work for me to do while I'm here. I want you to just consider that. So, justice, revenge. Of course, you can never truly get justice here. And for me, the famous one is Romeo and Juliet, right? You have the two families, Montague and Capulet. Capulet? Anyway. And it's like, you've killed someone in my family, so I'm going to kill someone of your family. And this feud escalates and goes back and forth and back and forth. And it's just, there's no end. It continues to grow. It's like throwing a little bit more fuel on the fire, and more fuel and more fuel. I don't know if you've ever thrown gas. It's like, it's strong. It's and that's exactly what you're doing. And it doesn't actually ever stop, because you can never actually truly have justice, right? And so you continue to kill each other back and forth, and nothing ends up at the end of that. Romans chapter 12, verse 21. Don't let evil conquer you, but conquer evil by doing good. So he's giving you the recipe. He says that when evil comes to visit you and you've been wronged, don't respond in the same kind of wrongdoing. You're no better then. I mean, come on, right? But instead, begin to respond with good. And I feel like this is the recipe, or this is the beginning training of that when you get hurt, that when you get abused, that when you get taken advantage of, and you respond in an incredible love, a radical love, that you are training yourself for something bigger, something more. And you think it's hard now, but think of the society back then. Like I said, humility was not something that they had. Like maybe some people had, but humility was seen as weakness back then, right? People they puffed themselves up. Look at what good I have. Come on, think of the disciples who go before Jesus, and it's like, I want to sit at your right hand. I want to sit at your left hand. I want the highest place of honor. They fought over moments of honor and pride and being elevated. This was an entire society that thrived on that were arrogant, that were puffed themselves up, right? and we should be doing the opposite, right? We should, like, you think it's hard now to respond with love. Think back then. And Jesus was doing it and showing it back then, when I think society was a lot harder to deal with on stuff like that. Okay? But again, It's radical love is about giving up the idea of justice, right? And receiving your suffering, if you will, and responding in that love. If you are sued in court and your shirt is taken from you, give your coat too. So here's number 2. Let me give you some background story on this one. So we've covered this lap, the revenge, if you will. And now we're talking about, so you're sued in court and your undergarment is taken. And it says, give your coat as well. Here's the interesting thing. Back then, they had nice, warm, hot days and cold evenings. And their cloak, which usually was like a representation of their household, usually had their family crest or something about who they were. It was a very important thing. And they used it, yeah, of course, to stay warm in the evening, but many people used it if they were traveling as their bed, right? It's like their blanket of what kept them warm in the evening. So it provided protection against getting sickness, against, like, your coat was a very important thing. So usually when you made some kind of transaction with someone, some kind of deal, you would trade cloaks. I'll take your family crest, you take my family crest, until we both have met the agreements, the terms of our agreement, and then we give it back. And if not, because the idea was collateral, but the collateral was like, this is my safety, this is my refuge, this is my protection that I am giving you. This is me being a man of my word. And so very often they wouldn't even give their cloaks. They would give a layer. So they wore a lot of layers back then, protected them from the sun, let air flow through and kept them cool throughout the sun and still warm in the evening. They would usually give an undergarment when they made a transaction like that. But you could still give like your cloak and be like, I'm serious about this. But there was, like, it was such a thing that there was a law saying that by the time sundown happened, you had to give, no matter what, whether they kept their word or not, that you had to give the cloak back. Because it was their protection, it was their security, their safety. And so there was a law in place that said, sun goes down, you have to give that cloak back. And so here it's talking about if you get sued for your undergarment. So it's like, you haven't kept your term of the deal, I guess. And so you've given your undergarments. And so the response here is, don't just give your undergarment. They've taken it. They sued you because you didn't hold your end of the bargain, right? And they've won. And so you give them, and some people could be very bitter when they lose something like that, right? Maybe it wasn't fair terms or whatever. But he says, don't just give up your undergarment, but give the thing that causes security, protection, safety. Give your cloak as well. Like, it offers such a, I am so sorry for not being able to hold my end of the deal. Or even if you feel like it was unjust, that the verdict was wrong or whatever, it is still the idea that let me restore to you not only my undergarment, but the very thing that gives me safety and protection. I will give that up to you because I want you to feel like you have been restored completely. A totally different way of looking at it. You're looking again for that restitution of relationship. You've wronged me, let's go to court, fight it out. You want, well, you know what? Relationship is so much more important to me. Let me practically give it all to you. Because that's what's more important. So again, when you're sued, you're thinking of what you're losing, right? And it's like, this has been taken from me now. I have to offer this up. I have to give this up. No one goes to court and is just like, hey, take it all, right? Usually it's a point of contention. But when one side wins, he's like, then restore. Give it all up. Make it right. Restore that relationship. So again, when we look at radical love that says, this belongs to me. Think of when something gets stolen from you, right? This is mine. God is there to say, no. None of it belongs to you. I have given it all to you. So instead of trying to hold on to things, let them go. Give them up. Because in that moment that you go against the rest of the world and the way the rest of the world would respond, when you begin to restore relationship, and not just between you and them, but between them and God. Ouch. Can I get an amen? I'm looking at my camera. you're not just looking for restitution between you and them, but between them and God. Because the way they view the world is the law. Is eye for an eye, is eye sued, I get what is rightfully mine, what belongs to me. And instead, God is saying, no, give it up. Give up your safety, your security, your protection. Be humble. You know, you've offended someone to such a degree, well, repay them back. Make them feel right. So he's going against everything that you're feeling and responding in such a way that it allows other people still in that moment to feel loved, to feel cared for. And it doesn't reflect from you, but it reflects on who God is. Like I said with the movies, in the essence of those emotions, it reflects who God is. Every moment of that courage, of love, of passion, of protection, of that brings tears to your eyes, all of it responds to who God is. And so in these moments of radical, immense love, you're doing the same thing. You're beginning to cause these emotions of restoration, if you will, between them and God. I don't know how else to put it. All right, let's continue. If a soldier demands that you carry his gear for a mile, carry it 2 miles. Give to those who ask. Don't turn away from those who want to borrow. So, ready for the last one here? Jewish nation was under the power of the Romans. Romans took over, and they kind of really took over. And they created certain laws and certain ways of dealing with things. So believe it or not, because they had taken over, they can go to Israel or Israelites or any person and give them a nice little tap on the shoulder. Be like, excuse me, I need you to carry my stuff for me. And they had to do it. You could own a business and be in the middle of a transaction and be like, excuse me, I need you to carry my gear. And you would have to drop everything and submit to them. Now, who likes that kind of submission? Wouldn't you feel like I'm a slave? It's great. I own my own business. I'm my own person. I am a free person, but not to you. I am ultimately, in the end, in your eyes, I am your slave. And that's the way you're going to treat me. Now, Romans went to war often. They took over a lot of the world. And so when they were going to war, coming back from war, is when they would usually have stuff to carry. But at the same time, it was so kind of humiliating, so that they made a law in place, okay, that said you could only do it for a mile. After a mile, you could have someone else on the side and say, all right, you carry it for the next mile, okay? But you couldn't get the same person to just carry it forever. So I guess it just really put in place, it's like, yeah, we're over you, but we're not going to go to such a degree that this is going to cause rioting and civil war and stuff, right? So we'll make laws to keep that in check. Put you in your place, but still you submit to us. It's a crazy way of like thinking, looking at it and stuff. Like, this is hard stuff, okay? So imagine being tapped on and being told, you're going to carry my stuff now. You have to drop everything and carry it. And during the entire time that you're carrying it, your friends, your family is watching you being treated almost like a slave. And so, and your response during all of that is going to be grinding your teeth. It's going to be, this isn't right, this isn't fair. Oh, there's that justice thing again, right? This isn't fair. And instead, Jesus is responding to that too. And he says, don't just carry it for 1, carry it for 2. Offer it. Don't respond with that. It's about what's going on in your heart, right? When something gets taken from you, when something is unjust, you'll never receive justice in this earth. And so Christ, Jesus is saying, let it go. Let it go and respond with love, that love conquers all. That when you respond in love, there's nothing that they can truly take from you. Yeah, all right, you've asked me to take me one, and it is kind of humiliating, but you know what? Let me help you out. Let me do you the favor. Let me carry it for 2. Let me respond with a radical love that will begin to show you that I represent something a little bit different. A true base of love that can only come from God. And I'm telling you that you truly begin, when you do that, when you respond in a radical love, the world around you begins to change. think back of history, of moments that people have fought oppression, women's rights, or Martin Luther King, or even Nelson Mandela, or there's lots of people that have been mistreated and have responded in love. And when we look back on history on them, don't we look up to those people? Those people who fought for what was right, and who, when being abused and taken advantage of, those people didn't respond with let's war, let's fight. They responded in a radical love that began to change the world around them. As it began to show more and more of who Christ was, it began to change the world around them. So, like I said, you think we had it rough, they had it rougher because it was their culture, right? But let me begin to address the things that are in your heart, if I may, okay? I'm going to go in depths of degree here, okay? So number one, and let's start, if you can, to work with this one, okay? That when you get wronged, don't respond with evil for evil, okay? I'm not even asking you to do anything good yet, okay? Level one. Level one. Don't repay evil for evil. Find that in your heart, let it go. If you've begun to conquer this one and you're like, I'm good. When I get hurt, when I get something stolen from me, I can begin to let it go and stop seeking justice, okay? So number two, can you be happy with equal retaliation, okay? So no more giving back, just equal. Something gets taken from you, you get the same response back. So we started with don't respond for evil with evil. Number two, you think you can handle being just completely fair with someone? That's number two. You ready? Number three. Can you return nothing of the suffering that you have received? So no matter how you've been humiliated or hurt, can you dish none of it back? So instead of desiring revenge and can you actually just take your suffering, take that hurt, take that abuse, that wrongdoing, that humiliation that you took, and just begin to let it go? That's number three. I like these because when I begin to look at them all, I'm just like, wow, you're beginning to change what's in my heart, right? Number four, can you give up the idea of justice and accept the pain that you receive? So no more do I want, equal retaliation here, and no more am I going to cause suffering in return, but I'm actually going to give up with the idea of justice. And I'm just going to accept the pain, the abuse, the taking advantage of someone, right? I'm going to just let it go. Everything belongs to God anyways. All right, number five, can you be prepared to actually receive more suffering? So it's one thing to be like, okay, I've taken the hurt that I've received and I'm going to let it go. But now, to the next degree, can you actually expect people to hurt you? Can you get used to the idea that in my heart, it's like, great, this person's most likely going to hurt me again. And you know what? It's okay. I'm okay with that. All right, number six. In your heart, can you practice not hating the person who hurt you? I'm truly talking about a let it go here. Okay? So someone who has hurt you, you can say, all right, I've received it. I'm letting it go. I can even expect a little bit more. Okay? But now I'm actually going to begin to not hate them. All right, number seven, can you now start loving them and beginning to understand, to see that they need to understand true love? Okay? Now, in saying all of this, it's just popping in my mind, okay? If you're receiving physical abuse, that's like a whole other thing, and you need to get out of that. Always protect is something a little bit different here, okay? So I'm not talking about it in that way. And as you're, trying to receive this, that's not what I'm talking about, okay? Okay, so number 8, can you respond? So now you've begun to love them. Can you actually respond with actions of love, kindness to them? And finally, can you pray for them? So we've just gone from like receiving evil and being okay with it to beginning to let things go and slowly on the journey begin to love people back. And let me ask you the question, what does it mean to be Christian? Right? Isn't it supposed to be that you reflect Christ-like character? And so shouldn't you be there to love, to care for, to the people who hurt you? Christ commanded us. He gave us, he said, listen, you say this is the law. I say go beyond that. Begin to love people. Stop seeking for restitution. Stop seeking for justice. Stop seeking all these things. Let them go and respond with love. And that's where he brought us. Mark 15. When the Roman officer who stood facing him saw how he died, he exclaimed, "This man truly was the Son of God." Luke 23, verse 47. When the Roman officer overseeing the execution saw what had happened, he worshipped God and said, "Surely this man was innocent." If you can think of Jesus' final moments, that this Roman officer was part of the entire journey, of Christ, right? Maybe had slapped him or made fun of him or was like part of this entire thing, okay? So I'm going to read to you just a little bit of what I wrote here. Jesus in his final moments, after being slapped, after carrying his cross, after having his cloak gambled away, that's his safety and protection, don't forget, okay, asks the Father to forgive them because they didn't know what they were doing. In his moment before death, he promises a criminal a spot in heaven. As he dies, he still shows radical love that repays evil with love. He repaid every evil with love and kindness. He took so much suffering and dished none of it back. And the sky turned dark, and the ground began to shake. The winds blow, and a man who was part of every step of that, who helped put nails into his hands, forced him to carry the cross. Maybe even the one who had slapped him or made fun of him, okay? This man breaks down in tears, and he exclaims that this man truly is the Son of God, and he gives his heart to the Lord right there on the spot and begins to worship him. Christ, in all that he had done, responded with a radical love that began to shake the foundations of what people believed, of the justice system that they craved, of all of that, of the arrogance that they wanted. He says, you want it? I give it to you freely. You want to treat me as a slave? I will carry it for two. You want to slap me to make yourself, feel like I have done something so wrong to you? Then do it again on the other side. Let me repay you, to remove those feelings that you have, because love conquers all. And Jesus, who had been crown of thorns placed on his head, nails in his hands, whipped when it was against the law to whip beyond a certain amount, they went till they were exhausted, ripped the flesh from his body, and in response he still carried that cross. And while on that cross, he tells the criminal beside him, "Today you will be with me in paradise." Even in that moment, he says, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." No matter what he had received, he responded in love. And even one of the Roman officers who was there and part of the entire journey recognized that this man was not like anyone else, but was the Son of God, and began to worship right there on the spot. I'm telling you, when you begin to show radical love, it changes the world around you. It changes people's hearts. It changes everything. And so you need to go against those feelings that you have inside of restitution and wanting justice and feeling like you're wronged and feeling humiliated, and let it go. Let people take what they're going to take from you, no matter what it is. Respond by giving even more. When someone asks to loan money and you know they're never going to give it back, don't refuse them. Give it to, this is what he's saying. Stop holding on to the things of this world. Give it up and love people radically, and things begin to change. Radical love, no matter how hard the heart, no matter if it takes a lifetime, and the final moments arrive where the ground shakes and the wind howls and the sky turns dark, has the opportunity to show who God is and causes a change. God's presence is intense. But let me tell you a secret. As you take the slap, as you give up your legal rights and live according to God's law of radical love, as you carry the baggage an extra mile, God pulls you away from the security of safe love. He pulls you into the deep waters of love. No, The ground beneath you isn't there anymore, and it is scary. It's not the shoreline where you can stay comfortable. But in being in the deep waters, there is only one thing that you have left to cling onto, and that's Jesus. That is where the action is. That is where the incredible things happen. It is where you feel his support. It is where you feel God's presence manifest itself in ways that the shorebound people will never feel. It is where you have no choice but to take a closer look at Jesus, at his perfect example of radical love. And it is where the hostility ends and peace begins. Radical love doesn't make any sense. Who welcomes suffering and endures? And yet it is what the world needs to see and what love really is. Think about that. I hope you like the analogy. I think of like the song Oceans, right? Take me into the deeper waters. And when he does, and there's no ground beneath your feet anymore, and the only thing you have left to your security, your one thing that you can hold on to is Christ himself. As you give up of the things that you want to cling on to in this world and show an incredible, radical love, I am promising you the world around you will begin to change. Will you bow your heads and pray with me? Father God, it is not always easy, especially when we're being taken advantage of, or when people take things from us, or when people want to humiliate us, fight us, hurt us, God, to respond with an incredible love, to show caring for that person instead of wanting to hurt them back or taking what's rightfully mine. It goes against the very things that we feel. But God, when we let go of those things, we give up of those things and we respond with an incredible love, even to our oppressors, the world around us begins to change. And like I said, even if it takes a lifetime, where, someone has been a horrible all their life, but in the final moments, they can think back of a radical moment that someone showed them love, then even in that moment, there is hope for someone out there, God. So God, humble us. Allow us to let things go of this world, to not cling on to the things here, God, but cling into the heavenly realm. Cling onto who you are, God. Bring us closer to you. May we overflow in a radical love. God, give us patience. Give us endurance, God. Help us to be wise, Lord, at the same time. Help us to be wise, and it's not like we're looking to be punished. That's not what we're talking about here, God. So help us to be wise in situations, but recognize the moments where we can show incredible love to people who are filled with evil, who are filled with hatred, and begin to show them another way, that there is something more powerful, and it is your love. God, I continue to pray for protection for people, especially as, Corona's not done yet. There's still cases out there, God, and so I continue to pray for your protection. I pray for healing, God. I pray for wisdom with doctors, with people, God. But may we not live in fear. May we live close to you and strong, God. Help us to be wise. In Jesus' mighty name I pray. Amen. Amen. God bless you guys. Thank you so much for enjoying today with me. Have a great day.